For a second day now, a team of specialized divers is searching for 6 missing people on board a luxury yacht off the coast of Sicily when that yacht sank in bad weather on Monday. One person has been confirmed dead. 15 others, including a 1-year-old little girl, were rescued. 8 of those people who were rescued do remain in the hospital today. CNN's Barbie Nadeau is joining us now from Rome with the very latest. So in terms of this search team, some weather got in the way. Where do things stand now?
Yeah, you know, they're really struggling trying to reach this sunken ship. This is a very large luxury yacht. And, you know, they reached the ship yesterday. They got as far as the control room, but then they were met with a, you know, sort of a maze of electrical cords and things like that. So they had to come back up. Now, these specialized divers usually work in caves rescuing people. They can only stay underwater about 10 to 12 minutes. So 50 meters under the surface of the water, it takes a long time. But we took a closer look at the whole tragedy.
A dream Mediterranean holiday turned deadly when a luxury yacht carrying VIPs was hit by a waterspout early Monday morning off the coast of Sicily. Of the 22 passengers and crew on board, at least 15 people survived. Divers searched through the night to recover those trapped in the sunken vessel. On board, tech titan Mike Lynch and his 18-year-old daughter, Hannah. Morgan Stanley chairman Jonathan Bloomer and prominent attorney Chris Morvillo and their wives, an official told CNN. Lynch's wife, whose company owned the 56-meter yacht, survived. All the passengers were guests of Lynch, who was acquitted of fraud charges in the U.S. over the sale of his company. A local fisherman who was waiting out the storm saw the ill-fated yacht.
We waited about 10 minutes to see the intensity of the tornado, and we went out to sea. We were first to give rescue, but we found no one at sea. We only found cushions and the remains of the boat.
The luxury yacht's 72-meter, 236-foot aluminum mast snapped in the storm, sending 15 people into the sea, including a 1-year-old girl whose mother carried her above her head in the waves, she told reporters. The survivors, including all 10 crew members, were rescued by a nearby sailboat who found them in a lifeboat.
With 15 people inside.
15 people.
15 people inside. 4 people injured. 3 heavy injured.
Yeah.
And we brought them to our ship. And then we communicated with the Coast Guard. And after some time, the Coast Guard came. And later they picked the injured people. And when we 2 hours later, they picked up the other people.
The local prosecutor has opened an investigation to determine whether the tragedy could have been averted or if circumstances were beyond anyone's control.
And, you know, when you listen to that, it's just a harrowing situation. Those rescuers, you know, saying that the vessel is largely intact at the bottom of the sea, which actually is making it more difficult. Had it broken open in some way, they might be able to reach those people thought to be in some of the 6 suites that were at the bottom of that luxury yacht. And they'll continue working around the clock until they can retrieve them.
Yeah, it's such an interesting point that does, in fact, make it more difficult to access those cabins. And we'll continue to follow this. Barbie, appreciate it. Thank you. Joining me now is Sal Mercogliano. He's a maritime historian, former merchant mariner. And you know, Sal, it's good to have you with us. You know this type of boat very well, in addition to the area where it's been and where it spends most of its time there in the Mediterranean. First, talk to me about the boat itself, its form, which actually can make it a little bit more susceptible to high seas, as I understand it.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Erica. This is a sailing yacht. So we're talking about a ship about 183 feet in length, but what's unique about it is the sail feature. Its mast is over 236 feet in height. That's 50 feet larger than actually the length of the vessel. And since this ship is powered by sail, a windstorm, a waterspout, a kind of sea tornado would have an adverse effect against such a vessel.
And what struck me, too, my colleague Barbie Nadeau reporting earlier, one of the issues that some of the divers had is the fact that the boat is essentially still intact. So being able to get in there safely and to access some of the cabins where we think people may have been trapped, that's actually more difficult because it's intact. Just walk us through why.
Yeah, so this vessel got hit by that tornado at sea. And what probably happened is because of that type of wind, a very hard burst of water and wind at the same time, probably placed the vessel on its beam end, basically pushed it over on its side. And unless all the hatches had been secured and everything had been battened down, the vessel would have flooded. And based on that report, indicates the vessel probably took on a lot of water very quickly and went down to the bottom. And that is nightmaric for the crew on board being asleep and then all of a sudden waking up to a ship in the room you're in being on its side and flooding with water heading down to the bottom.
Yeah, it's just it's horrific to think of what people were going through. This area too of the Western Mediterranean, you said this can actually be more prone to rough seas than I think probably a lot of people imagine.
Yeah, Balin operated in the Mediterranean. It spent its time mainly between Spain and Italy. And while we tend to think of the Mediterranean as, kind of flat and glassy and a beautiful kind of enclosed sea, it can be very rough and it is susceptible to storms like we saw took place. The ship sailed out of Palermo at the early beginning of the month. It had spent basically a few weeks along the northern shore of Sicily before coming back in. And it's very hard to prepare for a storm like this because you really can't get underway and sail into the wind and waves like a normal storm. This hits you all of a sudden, and the wind can hit you from almost any direction.
And so given that fact that the weather can come up so quickly, just as as I'm sure people are watching this or other people are thinking, what do I need to take into account if I'm going to be in that area? Is there any way to avoid a moment like this? I mean, in terms of the heads up that you would get, how you can get to a safer space, it sounds like no in many respects.
Yeah, it's one of the issues on a private yacht. This yacht spends most of its time tied up to a berth or at anchor. It's used for just a few months during the year. A ship's master or the yacht captain would have been cognizant of weather, getting daily and frequent weather updates. But you're kind of at the whims of the owner too, where they want to be. Do you want to do a storm evasion, set out to sea to avoid the weather, or do you want to try to ride it out? And unfortunately, they found themselves in a position there where the storm came in, and this would have been a very quick event on board the vessel, from being everything fine to finding yourselves in extremis.
Yeah, it's just a really terrible tragedy. Sal, really appreciate your expertise. Thank you for joining us.